and welcome to From the Be-All End. I'm Simon Evans, and with me here is Andrew Greaves and Paul Woodhouse, and we're going to get into all the news that's been coming out of Turf Moor over the last week or so. We've been feeding you special interviews with the likes of Sean Dyche and Jimmy Mullen over the summer period and had some tremendous feedback on those. Before we get into all the news out of Turf Moor, Woody, what did you make of the Jimmy Mullen interview?
I haven't watched it yet.
All right.
Just goes to show we do no planning for this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? You reminded me. You reminded me.
It's had 6,000 listens and views, but the guy on the podcast hasn't bothered. Right,
no,
okay.
I've only ever watched one, and that was Sean
on.
Dyche. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Greavesy, you, I presume, have watched the Jimmy Mullen episode.
I have, yeah. I really enjoyed it. I mean, hats off to James and to Paul for sorting it and then dealing with the logistics of, going down to South Wales and doing it. But I really enjoyed it. I thought Jimmy, he's a really humble guy, isn't he? And he's kind of, I know from the dealings we were having with the editing, he was worried that he'd not mentioned enough people who he was thankful for and things like that. But I loved it. I mean, we don't hear from him very often. I interviewed him for the 91-92 anniversary DVD. I think Chris interviewed him about Aberdeen. But, in that period since he left, we've never really heard from him very much.
30 years we've hardly heard from him.
No.
Yeah. And he's, he brought all the memorabilia you saw. So that brilliant caricature poster, which I wish I still had mine, he brought that with him. I thought James and Paul had taken it down. He said, no, he brought that. He brought this book. Got a little clip that we're going to put out probably by the time you listen to this, of him looking through a book of Wembley 94 pictures that one of the press guys gave him. It's a big, thick book, but we've got that just a bit of a behind-the-scenes teaser like we did for the trailer. So there's a couple of other little bits that we've got which we'll drop out on the channels over the next couple of weeks or so.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for it to come out on VR, though. That's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it a lot. He warmed into it, didn't he? Really, I think at the start he were a bit unfamiliar terrain for him. He's probably not done many podcasts, but by the end he was really warming up when he was going through his players, his favourite players, and picking his team and everything. It was that was when the nostalgia really kicked in for me, and judging by the comments, people really enjoyed it as well. So yeah, no, that was great to have that really. But let's get down to the mixed bag of news from Turf Moor over the past few days. So let's start off. What shall we have? Good news or bad news first? Let's
Let's have good news. Good news, shit news. Good news.
Or indifferent news? Irrelevant news.
Irrelevant news.
Well, the good news is Maxime Esteve.
Who's Maxime Esteve? Yeah. No, it is. Although I'm still slightly wary that it just means that we'll get an inflated fee for him sometime in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think contracts don't really mean a lot in modern football, obviously, do they, Greavesy? But I think it kind of keeps him here for this season, doesn't it? Really, barring something bizarre in January, no?
Yeah, I think so, and I think Esteve's a really likable character. And I think, Chris said that on our WhatsApp group when he said, he's someone you can hang your hat on. We've been wanting a player or players, and I think Parker's got that with this squad, where you kind of go, you know what, Esteve made no noises about leaving last year at all when everybody was jumping ship in that last week and squaring up to Matt Williams to try and get a move and all of this shit that we keep hearing. And he's not made any noise this summer about moving. He was tagging a wall in California or Miami or wherever it were with Up the Clarets. He's not quite gone Ashley Barnes' arse tattoo. But I think he's somebody who buys into, and he's probably grateful to both company for bringing him in and for Parker for making him a better footballer than he was. And I think it's rare is that loyalty. And, we're not going to say he's going to be here in 5 years when that contract expires. But the club have been smart in terms of agreeing with him, another pay rise by the looks of things, and probably inserting a nice kind of minimum fee clause in that contract as well with a bit of luck.
Yeah, I mean, he feels like a player who's so good that we're not going to be able to keep him long term. But we'll see how he does. As Daz mentioned on a previous podcast, we'll see how he actually does against the big boys in the Premier League, because it is one thing to look like a Rolls-Royce defender against championship strikers, and another thing against the kind of boys he'll be facing in a couple of weeks. Obviously, we lost his partner as well, so to see how he adjusts to that, with obviously Egan Riley having gone for a free. James Trafford saga is over, so can find Chris Bowden can stop waking up of a morning and cursing Newcastle United for their 14th bid and their supposed gentleman's agreement, which clearly either didn't exist or there's not many gentlemen around, one or the other. But he's gone. He's gone to Man City. You presume he's going to start as number 2 there to Ederson. Woody, are you sad to see him go? Inevitable? How do you feel about it?
You always knew it was going to happen. You were probably expecting it last year, as much as this year. But it's always been tied on, and I miss him a little bit because I think he had become part of the fixtures and fittings, and he was quite a likeable character, wasn't he? But he wasn't. It was another one who wasn't going to stay around, was he, forever? So, good luck to the fella.
Greavesy, your thoughts on Trafford's departure?
Yeah, I mean, we were very, very critical during the Premier League season, and I think a bit like we've said about Esteve, you think that he's probably improved as a goalkeeper, but he had a good defence in front of him. He was part of that defensive unit. Let's not rewrite history, but he wasn't tested anywhere near as much as he would expect to be tested in a Burnley goal in the Premier League, a bit like Egan Riley. We've got a lot of these players who look great in a pretty poor division. The challenge is stepping up. He obviously has gone to City with an eye on, becoming number 1 within kind of 12 months or whatever, and moving into that kind of England number 1 spot, which I think he will do. He might not be in time for the World Cup next year, but you expect him to play quite a few games for City as their cup keeper. And given the way that City, advance in cup competitions, you would expect him to get a good run in both the FA Cup and the Carabao, and possibly even a couple of European games as well if they're dead rubbers in the group stages. So it is the natural kind of next step in his progression if he wants to be England number 1. I think superb last season. I don't think, you could put... he put a foot wrong, really. Those 2 ridiculous penalty saves against Sunderland in the last couple of minutes, probably the highlight of a very, very good season for him as the Golden Glove winner and part of that record-breaking kind of team. So I wish him all the best. I think, it's inevitable, as Woody said, he wasn't going to hang around. Didn't throw his toys out the pram last season. He spoke on a podcast, Ben Foster's podcast, I think, saying, he really wanted to join Newcastle, but I think it shows the character that, he backed himself to go back into the Premier League after a disastrous season, with Burnley. But he gave us a good season, was part of the team who led us to that brilliant, on the cusp of the Championship to lose out on goal difference.
I mean, it just raised the question now, are we going to have to go out and sign a goalkeeper? Because we've got a couple, haven't we? We've got, obviously, Hladky and Max Weiss there, but do you think, Woody, that we need to go out and replace Trafford, or do you think maybe Max Weiss was the replacement, or it didn't feel like it when he came in, did it?
No, and it still doesn't feel like it now. And I don't think Hladky is either. I don't think he exactly equipped himself as well as he could have done in these little cameos last year. No. He had 1 or 2 howlers, didn't he? So maybe we are looking for an additional keeper. There's talks of Sam Johnston, etc. We may resurrect somebody from somewhere in the doldrums of the Premier League. But we've got previous of being able to find decent keepers and bring them in and resurrect them. So I don't have too much worry about that. And besides, whoever comes in, it's going to be harding to nothing, isn't it?
Well, it's ages since we've had a bad keeper and had keeper problems, hasn't it? You look back all those years under Dyche, the keeper was one of the first names on the team sheet, literally, and he was always a stronger and always with a strong backup there as well. So it's a little bit uncharted waters at the moment that we don't have a natural, Pope went straight in, Heaton's been there, so it's all been well set up in the past. Suddenly it's a question mark.
Isn't it? Yeah, and I think I'm looking at the kind of compiling the list of who we're linked with: Ortega, Pope, Dubravka, Johnston, Sam Johnson. I think it's clear that he wants a Premier League ready goalkeeper. I think Max Weiss is probably the new Nick Pope, as was when Heaton was in charge, when Heaton was in goal. He's probably the next cab off the rank. as Woody said, it don't feel like he's going to be the number one, given the fact that he was on the bench to Vlacky for the first half of the Huddersfield game, for instance. I know we can't really tell much because we split the squad, but I'd probably expect him to have started that game if he was ahead of Vlacky for the number one jersey. And interestingly, the number one, because the squad numbers have been announced, the number one and the number 8, which of course is Josh Brownhill, which I'm sure we'll get on to, those numbers haven't been taken yet. So maybe we have got an eye on a Premier League ready goalkeeper to come in as number one. I think Ramsdale's on his way to Newcastle, so maybe there's going to be that kind of domino effect of, that frees up Dubravka, Pope. Somebody else gets one of them, and then Ortega's available. There's a lot of kind of merry-go-round. I think the PSR deadline is Thursday as well, so maybe we suddenly see a few signings across various clubs announced from Friday onwards, when we don't have to worry too much about it being part of the reporting period for financial fair play, or whatever they call it these days.
Yeah. Sustainability and all that. Yeah, it's a new factor, that, isn't it? That people need to take into account. It almost creates a window within the window. When you look at Brownhill going as well, it does feel now to me like a little bit like we've been weakened a bit this summer, haven't we? We've lost from that team last year, one of the best defences in English football. We've lost the goalkeeper who was behind it. We've lost one of the centre-half pairing that was essential to it. And then in the promotion team, we've lost as best attacking midfielder and top goal scorer, who's the same person in Josh Brownhill. Is the Brownhill one, Woody, that is the biggest blowout of all of this?
No. He's not. I mean, the point is, this will have been his third or his fourth effort in the Premier League, and it's someone who's always never really made that step up to have that same level of dominance in the Premier League. He's always wound up being a bit part player, especially when we try to play two men in the middle, and so that he's not going to be as key a figure when playing in the Premier League. And it's unfortunate, because he's a great lad, isn't he? You just wish he could make that step up. But this season, he's definitely not going to be able to make that step up. He's not getting any younger. So it's one of those. He's not taking 15 goals from last season into this season. He's probably not playing a full season this season. And I think he quite possibly knows that as well.
You think that's what it was, Greaves, is it?
Yeah, I think it's quite telling that he's not got a club yet. I mean, he might have a club, but he spent the last kind of 3 or 4 weeks at various private training camps, which, the likes of Nathan Redmond's still out in Portugal, where Burnley was, getting up at the crack of dawn, doing shuttle runs and drills and things with these private coaches, which seems to be the way, players like Brownhill, who's a super fit lad, likes to spend their summer. They fly off to somewhere exotic, Dubai or Miami or, Spain, or I think he's in LA at the minute, or was. And they have a bit of play, but also they train their arse off. They're up at 7 o'clock in the morning. They're doing 2 or 3 hours on a training pitch with a private coach. So I just wonder what his next move is. I think, there's a lot of talk, as there always is, West Ham, Everton, Wolves. I just wonder whether his next move is America, one where perhaps, because he's missed 4 weeks of pre-season. Any English club is not going to want him fanning about in America. However good the private coach is, however fit a lad he is, most teams have been back for 3 or 4 weeks. Most Premier League teams, other than us, are off on foreign jaunts, playing Premier League Cup games in the Far East and America and things like that. Yet Brownhill has kind of sat on this contract offer and not done something. So I wonder whether there's... I'm not, and I don't mean this as a slight on him, and I agree with Woody. I'm not sure he might know, look, he's not going to get another chance with Burnley. He's not going to play a lot. He might have had that discussion with Scott Parker. I just wonder whether his next move is the MLS or perhaps even Saudi, where he can come in as a player who's scored goals, who's played in the Premier League, who will slot into, whatever training regime, having kept himself fit over the summer. Be very surprised if he turns up at a Premier League club. Slightly surprised if a Championship club at the top end bring him in now, given the fact that, most teams, any players we're linked with have been in training with their respective clubs for a couple of weeks. So they're not coming in having not played proper football with anyone for, 6, 8, 10 weeks, whatever it is, since the end of the season.
Yeah, I hope he is coming to Major League Soccer. I think it's made.
I think he'd be brilliant.
I think he'd do really well in MLS. There was that Toronto rumour, wasn't there?
Yeah.
You know, but I hope something like that comes off for him.
He won't be short of offers, I think. I don't think he'll be short of offers. I don't think he'll have any top-end English clubs after him. But I agree. I think he can go to America and become an absolute star and well-loved, and, he's a bit of a social media influence. I think he's perfect for him.
Yeah, I think so. Although I would have liked to see him stay, because I honestly think, and I said it on the pod towards the end of last year, that I think he improved a lot under Scott Parker. I think he learned how to time those runs better. His goal scoring wasn't an accident, and I think I would have really liked to have seen him play in that role, because too often in the Premier League we forget he got put into a more defensive midfield role, just ratting about and just in for his work rate. Really, I'd have liked to have seen that sort of Brian Robson-y bit, as we've talked about with him, see if it worked later in his career, but we're not going to find out. I just hope he doesn't join one of the sort of relegation scrappers. I don't want to see him playing for Leeds or something like that. But I think MLS would be great for him. But it does leave me wondering, though, having lost those players and what we've done in the market, most of those signings that we got done early were automatic deals that kicked in because of the loan arrangements that we put in place. Have we actually strengthened at all for the Premier League, apart from Kyle Walker, which is obviously a great signing, as we've said? We've lost his keeper, a centre-half, and our central midfielder and top goal scorer. Where's the replacements? We haven't brought in a centre-forward either. Are we getting worried? Are we going to be in a situation again where the last week of the transfer window we're desperately hoping we get some brilliant signings over the line? Woody?
Well, this is a third season on the bounce, isn't it, where we've been asking exactly the same thing. This is the same set of improvements that we were asking for 3 years ago. And it's like, it seems mind-numbingly obvious what we've had to do for a while. And we haven't, but this time, we just haven't seemed to have made any replacements or thought about throwing anybody into the mix with regards to that. We've always needed improvements in that centre midfield. If Brownhill had stayed, we needed improvements, and far better improvements. We need somebody extremely solid in the middle of the park. Keepers slightly different, because they're going to be under the cosh a little bit. But you'd like to think we can find an additional centre half and hope that Bayer gets up to speed fairly sharpish. And up top, we've said before, we know that there aren't loads of bargain basement 15-goal a season strikers floating about, but it doesn't mean that you can't try to find someone, does it?
I mean, you presume Twenzarbi has been signed to replace Egan Riley at the moment, but if somebody else might come in, I suppose. Are you worried, Greaves? Did you feel like we're weakened from last season?
I don't, and only because I do think those replacements going striker, I can't give any assurances on, because I don't think they're out there. But I think they will bring in a goalkeeper who we go, yeah, that's all right. Premier League experience. We're not starting with a kid who's only played League One football. Tick. I think Walker and Tuanzebe, I think both of them are an upgrade on Egan Riley in whatever system he plays. If it is a 3-5-2, which we think he's played behind closed doors against Wolves and Fleetwood or whoever we played. The midfielder is the one. I think that's where I'd be kind of really looking, because I do think probably that 3-5-2 system with some of the players we've got in, or got in the door already. Obviously, you want a striker. They're almost impossible to get. Nobody's picking up a striker in our a guarantee. There's no guarantee. Sunderland have spent 107 million. They've done an us from 2 years ago. Granit Xhaka, yeah, fair enough. He's probably their Walker. Leeds seem to have gone for bulk. They've gone for kind of toughness rather than skill. So there's talk of, I don't think Solomon's going to go back there. There's talk of Tanaka probably not even getting a game because he's a bit too skillful. He's not what's needed for the Premier League. So I think our biggest issue is midfield. I think a goalkeeper will take care of itself. Obviously, we've been linked with a lad from Napoli. I believe he was in England at the start of the weekend. And again, whether that is down to, PSR or whatever it's called, the profit and sustainability, I always find it quite interesting that in this week we've had no training pictures. So is there a couple of lads in the door already and we're just waiting for that, them announcements? I'm not saying, look, it could be me being kind of mischievous, but, we've suddenly gone from having daily training pictures of, people looking sweaty in Portugal. Even before they went to Portugal, we were getting daily pictures of that training, and now we're not. And I just wonder whether there's a couple of rabbits to be pulled out of hats. And like I say, I'm not one of these who follows planes, but there was a plane that went from Napoli to Blackpool last Friday on the same day as Cajuste, whatever he's called. Basically said, I'm on my way to my new club, everything's set, blah, blah, blah. I don't think there's many people taking private planes from Naples to Blackpool. I mean, I went the other week and I would, barely taking a private car from Burnley to Blackpool was enough for me, with some greasy fish and chips on the front. But I think it's one of those in terms of...
He's probably not joining the Seasiders on a 6-month loan, is he?
No.
He's not another one of our unconfirmed rumours that is very quite prescriptive. As per, yeah.
So I'm not saying he's signed. I'd never go as far as that because I've not been told anything. But I just wonder whether there's things in the pipeline, and suddenly once that deadline's out of the way, and we can kind of go, right, now we've got a bit of freedom because the next period starts or whatever. I still don't understand it. I'll be honest. I think maybe before weekend we get another body in the door, and then another couple before Lazio to give us a good run. I think one of them will be a keeper. I think one of them will be a midfielder, and you hope to God one will be a striker, because Lyle Foster at number 9 in the new squad list does not fill me with joy.
Yeah, I'm taking the view that they had to give him the number 9 because it'd be a snub to say, like, we're going to leave the number 9 shirt empty and give you number 32, Lyle.
Yeah.
But
they've done it with Benson, haven't they? They've relegated him from 10 to 27 or whatever he is.
And Edwards has got the 10.
Yeah. Edwards has got
the 10.
So,
yeah.
But, the rumour I saw just before we came on air was a rumour linking us with a possible loan move for Mason Mount, which sounds like kind of deal you'd go, yeah, I'll have that. But maybe too good to be true, that one.
I don't know. Is it though? Is it? You brought Walker in. I do think Walker probably has that little bit of pull. You know what I mean? If you're a Dubravka, or you probably don't need to persuade Popey too much. But if you're a Dubravka or a Ortega, and you see Walker, and you kind of think, hang on a minute, I fucking hate this word, but there's a project. Oh God, there's a project. What can we do with a project? It feels a bit more sustainable, doesn't it? The project than previous projects, which we've talked about several times. So maybe that's the pull. Maybe that's the bit that you go, that's helped us.
Yeah. Right. Also, Turf Moor news around the ground. So we've seen some images of the now to be fast-tracked changes to the tunnel area and the corner of the Bob Lord and the cricket field stand. What do we make of it all? First of all, those images didn't leave us none the wiser, really, but it's clearly the idea is to have a load of people gathered around the bus when it arrives. But what do you make of it all?
Yeah, a lot of, at least Microsoft Paint's still doing the rounds. That's all I can say. And the size of that bus, I think somebody mentioned it was very South Park-esque. But it was also like the size of a fucking Cunard ship liner, wasn't it? So some people are bringing some massive squads. No wonder we've widened the tunnel, just to get that bus through. But it's one of those. It feels like a big brouhaha over a lot of just minor tinkering. I don't know whether that like rooftop terrace is like going to happen. Looking out over what's it, and it's like. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's probably something. It's probably something and nothing. And I'd like to see how much exactly it will cost. But it'll probably look good on telly or VR or whatever.
What do you make of it, Greavesy?
There were a few bits I couldn't quite work out. I think the pub, the bar on the corner with the smoking terrace, because I think at the minute, if you're a smoker, they kind of cordon off a bit of the car park for you to step out onto at half time. But I do remember when those new stands were built in the mid-90s, the original plans did have a kind of a almost like, at Wembley, the new Wembley, the kind of upper floor bit. They did have almost a balcony on there, like you could just wander out there after, half time with your pie and your pints and have a fag. So I don't know. Like I said, the graphics were just bizarre. I mean, the turning off Brunshaw Road or Harry Potts Way into the car park, they seem to be. The big screen seemed to come out and connect with one of the houses on Brunshaw Road, which I'm not sure if that person's fully on board, almost to create a bridge for the bus to go under. I mean, there's no way there's going to be that many people. It's not Anfield on Derby Day, is it? I mean, there's a few people outside the Park View, I have to say, which, and I think there's certain things I think it's a good idea. Listen, if you can get that team bus coming down Harry Potts Way at a certain time every match day, and create a bit of atmosphere for players, because there's always people out the back, waiting for the bus to arrive. But if you can bring it up the main thoroughfare, turn into that car park, aside from it being an absolute health and safety nightmare, if you can do that and it looks good on TV and you give the players a bit of a, actually, you know what, this is pretty good, then fair enough. The bar on the corner, probably a welcome addition. Not sure the landlord of the Park View would see it that way because they do very well on a match day. The electricity bill is going to go through the roof, but I'm looking forward to seeing what this new tunnel is going to be like. I'm half expecting individual players to be announced coming out of it and things like that. But I think the biggest issue is the switching around of the fans in the cricket field end. I think that's caused a few problems because, as somebody pointed out, the pitch isn't actually central to that stand. The left-hand side where the away fans actually is set off the pitch a little bit, as it is on the right-hand side, it's kind of more onto the pitch. So I think a few people are quite rightly a bit miffed that they've had no consultation over these changes. So, I can understand their frustrations and, perhaps another sign of the club not quite getting the consultations right. And, dare I mention it, the Burnley FC Independent Supporters Association, driving to kind of get that voice heard with the club. So if you've not signed up yet...
Well, the club would say that they consulted with the fan advisory board, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would.
They would. You'd expect them to say that, wouldn't you? And I'm not using this as a platform to criticise the FAB. There's some brilliant people, and I know there is a lot of pushback on these things, but we've all worked in journalism long enough and have covered councils and government long enough to know what proper consultation looks like and what foregone conclusion consultation looks like. And I think the orders for the big tellies and stuff are probably already in. But yeah, listen, like I said, Burnley FC.
The bit out, the bit with the tunnel in that corner, I get moving the fans across to that side so that when the players come out, there's that atmosphere around them and all the rest of it. I get all that, but the bit about the bus, is it purely just to get the footage of like you see at Liverpool on a when they play City, that bus arrives and there's all the colours and the flares and and it looks really good on telly and people go, it must be mad at Burnley. Look at that. Is that the whole point of it?
Yeah, and I think they're going to get off the bus in the corner between the Jimmy Mack and the James Hargreaves and then walk the length of the James Hargreaves, turn left and walk across the front of the cricket field. So again, you've got that camera set up so people arriving with Netto carrier bags or whatever they carry the toiletries in players are walking down an empty stand, shaking hands with the odd, person in a suit and... it's all for, it's probably something the Premier League wants to make more of rather than just walking that very short distance, squeeze between the press room and...
Optics.
Yeah.
Optics.
Yeah. It's just going to say it's not for us. It's not meant for us.
No, it's visit Detroit.
Yeah. We might get caught up in it all. Yeah.
Although, to be fair, they are putting in 4 content creator pods, so I presume that's one for From the BL End, one for Turfcast, one for...
Where are these
the other
going to
be? They're going to be part of some new infill between stands, I think. Content creator pods. They look good, don't they?
I wonder who gets them.
Presume
it'd probably be for like away folks, won't they?
Yeah. It'd be for that. Him who does that United, bringing him in when we play United. Might be our old friend Vizé when he's over. It might be someone different. It might be us. We might get an invite. Can you imagine that?
You never know.
Bobby Paul in a pod.
Yeah, it won't be actually any Burnley fan creators. Yeah.
By the time this pod comes out, we'll have a new away shirt, so we should probably not get too involved in that. But on the home shirt, we have actually seen it in real life on grass in normal sort of photography environments as opposed to sort of the model things. I think it looks fantastic. But what are your impressions, Woody, when you've seen those pictures of us playing friendly matches in it and so on?
It does look surprisingly better than you give it credit for, like you say, in not actually in the flesh, but actually on TV. It looks good. And I know a lot of people have kind of complained about the slight shift from claret to purple, but it looks good. It does.
It looks more claret, doesn't it, Greavesy?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah. I mean, it's not true claret, but what is? I mean, if you look at the shades we've had over the last 30 years, there's various shades, but I think it looks really good. I went in the club shop. It does look good. I hate the sponsor logo, but I actually think it looks better with the sponsor logo. I think the plain one looks a bit like a training shirt because of the detail, the kind of in fabric detail. But I think it's a nice kit. I think it looks great on the players. I think, in the sunshine, opening day of the season against Spurs in the sunshine, I think that will look really good. And it looks really sharp, really clean, really classy. So, yeah, big thumbs up from me, actually, which is
good.
Unusual.
Last topic before we call it quits on this one. We did discuss this when it first became out as a rumour and a news story. It's now been sort of confirmed that the deal is going through for ALK Capital or Velocity Sports or whatever vehicle we want to talk about for Pace & Co. to buy Espanyol in Spain. We've seen messages from JJ Watt. We've seen messages from Alan Pace in Spanish declaring his love for the magical family of Espanyol. I've seen some Burnley fans really welcoming it and stuff. And some people will obviously be a bit nervous that it's a distraction. What do you make of it, Greavesy? Do you think it's going to make any difference to Burnley or not?
I don't know. I mean, there's talk of Koleosho going on loan, isn't there, to Espanyol and things like that. That was kind of one of the early rumours. But I don't know. I think I'm a bit nonplussed about it. I mean, he kind of looked at an Italian club. He looked at a Belgian club. Apparently, he's still after a Belgian club. He's trying to find clubs in places where there's a market for the players we want to be kind of buying. And obviously we got Koleosho from Espanyol, didn't we, a couple of years ago when he signed. So I don't know, there was some talk of Pace apparently moving to Barcelona. We know he's a big fan of Barcelona. I think he studied there, as he told Pep Guardiola in the Mission to Burnley documentary when he met Guardiola when Guardiola was sat in the dugout. So it's an interesting one in terms of, what it'll mean for Burnley. You obviously spoke to Dave Checkitts for your other project, Soccer Business, and we know he's tight with Alan Pace, and he's launched a kind of investment fund, hasn't he, for sports teams. So I wonder whether some of that money's coming into ALK, which is, perhaps mutually beneficial for both clubs. I did enjoy Burnley fans getting slightly worried that we might not get into the Europa League if Espanyol finished higher in La Liga than we did in the Premier League. I think that's probably a few years off. But, I mean, Pace did always talk about European football and Burnley challenging, and, maybe it will be distraction, maybe it won't be, maybe him being away from Turf Moor might allow some of the madder inventions he comes up with to kind of fall by the wayside or sweep the way down to the Iberian Peninsula, and they can put up with drums and all of that shit that we don't want. I don't know. I'm a bit nonplussed, if I'm honest. It's it's an investment vehicle.
What worries me, to be honest, is we can laugh about the Europe thing, but Espanyol have got a pretty reasonable chance. If you got that club in working order, you got a good coach in, you started getting results. In the Spanish setup, Espanyol finishing 5th and getting into Europa League is not inconceivable at all. I mean, you look at who the big clubs are in Spain. There's a gap there that you can get into, and Sevilla and teams like that have sort of occupied that space, but it's there to go at. If you're in a position where we're in the Championship, Woody, and we're 7th in the Championship, pushing towards the playoffs, and it's the January window, and Espanyol are third in La Liga, pushing for potential Champions League place, where's your money going? Where's your priority?
You've answered your question there, haven't you? You know,
That's my concern.
Exactly. From ALK's perspective, it's one thing saying, I expect Burnley to be challenging for the Champions League within 5 years. Okay, Al, but then they go out and actually buy a club that could be challenging for European football. That's the difference. They can still attain that goal by becoming a multi-owner operation. And like you say, you're exactly right. Where does that money go? Where do those priorities lie? As we yo-yo up and down, if the string breaks and, for example, we go down again, don't come up, and the wheels come off a little bit, then where are your priorities? You would start to think a little bit more Espanyol, wouldn't you?
And we're ringing up Jimmy Mullen and getting him to come back. Yeah. Well, it's an interesting one. I'm sure we'll return to that theme in the future as well. Stoke City away on Saturday in the friendly, the final sort of friendly before the big friendly against Lazio on the week before the season gets going at Tottenham Hotspur. Lots to look forward to. We'll be back again soon, getting back into the good rhythm as we get closer and closer to the season. But thanks very much for being with us. Do follow us on social media at Beehole Podcast and subscribe, as many of you have been doing on YouTube, to our feed there as well. All the best, and up the Clarets.